Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Garage Biljon and my 94 Safari build. If you saw the previous episode, you know I finished the rear axle lift off camera. I'm not fully done on that side. I've got the handbrake in again, I've got the brake shoes on, I've got the drum back on. I still need to do the drive shafts and I need to do the shocks in the back, and then that is completely buttoned up. For the rest, it's all done, but let me show you what arrived in the mail today. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, fully rebuilt front calipers for the Safari. So we are going to install those now. I'm going to install the brake lines that I've got. So we're going to button up the front with the braking system. The rear is already hooked up again. So once that is done, we'll bleed the system. And once the system is bled, I will adjust the handbrake. And then once that is done, I just need to hang the exhaust, put in the drive shaft, get the shocks in, and then we are ready to put it back onto the floor and see what the result is of my work for the last couple of weeks. So sit back, relax, and let's get working. Alright, this is done. Looks good, huh? All new hardware, all new piping. So I'll quickly do the other side. So this side is now buttoned up as well. It took me a bit longer to do because there was some powder coating in the threads on this side. For some reason they didn't clean this side very well, and you can see the new brake hose sitting there as well. So that means the next thing for us to do is to start bleeding the brakes. And that means filling up this reservoir that is now currently completely dry, because I left all the hoses open so that it can just basically gravity bleed itself all empty. So that gives me a good head start. But what I'm going to be using to bleed the brakes is this guy on the counter here. So this is a Sealy power bleeder. There are many brands that makes them, and it's about €50 on eBay or on Amazon, depending on where you buy them. It's a fairly common thing, but if you're going to search for it, it is a VS820 version 4. But basically what this has a hand pump at the top, which means you are pressurizing this container. That pressure gets transferred into your brake reservoir using this guy. And as long as you have a starting point with a full reservoir there and you have enough brake fluid in here, you are guaranteed to not introduce air bubbles into your system. And the other reason I like using this is because I can bleed the brakes all on my own. Normally you'd have someone sitting inside the car pushing on the brake pedal, then you open the slave cylinder, let some air out or let some fluid out, close it, let them come up again, and you keep on repeating this process hundreds of times until you have all four corners bled. But with this guy, it just has a constant pressure. So no matter where you open, it just starts pushing the brake fluid through the system. So what we are going to be doing now quickly is I'm going to prime the reservoir with new fluid. I'm going to put the rest of the fluid in the brake bleeder. And then once that is done, we'll connect them up and we'll pressurize the system. And then we'll start on the furthest point away from the reservoir, which in this case is the right-hand rear. So let's get that all set up. Alright, so I found the first issue as I was pressurizing the system. You can see I didn't do a good enough job of tightening up the brake line for the driver's side. So I'm going to snug this up again and then we'll try pressurizing the system again. I think I have it tightened up now. Let's see. It's still getting a drip there. Alright, so this guy is now dry. I just need to go check the rest of the connections. Yeah, this one's also seeping, so I need to tighten this one up some more. Right, so let's connect this tube up. That's probably going to be a two-handed job, or maybe not. There we go. And I've got an old bottle over here. Alright, so we're ready to bleed the right rear. So now I'm just going to gently open this guy up. And we should see the fluid coming through eventually. It needs a bit more. There we go. And true to form, the 924 Safari throws me a curveball when I least expect it. This is the bleed nipple for the right rear brake, and it snapped right off. Honestly, I thought these were in better condition, but obviously I was wrong. So I will be ordering new slave cylinders for these drums. That holds work, so we'll continue on another day. So while I'm waiting for that rear slave cylinder to show up, I'm quickly going to build the drive shaft. You can see this guy is nicely painted up again, and this is my new CV joint, the new boot, and some corking and a circlip and some more rings. But I'm not going to do a DIY on building drive shafts. I think there's enough of them around. But the one thing I wanted to show you, and that's something that very few people actually pay attention to, and that is that there is an inside and there is an outside to a CV joint. Even though it looks the same to the naked eye, it's not. And depending on the brand, there might be some kinds of tells, right? So you can see this one has a groove, a cut into it on this side. That tells you that this is the inside, which means this is the side pointing away from the wheel and away from the gearbox. And basically what that means is this edge always has to sit pointing towards the drive shaft, right? So it has to point towards the drive. So that's one way of knowing. The other one that this guy is showing me is it's pointing as like a V or an arrow, and that arrow in turn is pointing to the outside, which means if I put it back on again, that arrow has to point to the outside. Now, this is an SKF CV joint, but depending on what you buy, the language won't be the same, and that's the problem that you have. It's always having to figure out what's the inside and the outside. So there's one foolproof way of knowing, and I'm going to show it to you now. So if you look at this inner race, this is the outside one. You can see it's flat. There's just a nicely flat machined area there. However, if I turn it around and you look at this one, you can see there's a bit of a bevel there. There's like a chamfer. And that chamfer is what is showing you that this is the side pointing to the drive shaft. The reason they do this is because this side is fixed. This side never moves, right? This side is stuck up to the gearbox, or it's stuck up to the stub axle. So this side is fixed, it never moves. This is the side that moves. So in here you've got the axle, and the axle is going to move up and down inside this area, and that's why it's got the chamfer, to ensure that it has the maximum amount of movement. So remember this next time you are rebuilding your drive shafts, the chamfer side points to the axle like that. I'm quickly going to assemble all of this, and then I'm going to get it under the car, and then hopefully tomorrow my new slave cylinders will show up. Just one more thing before I button up this axle. I wanted to show you something here as well. You see that there is a big area between this where the ball runs, and then there's a small area and another ball. Then there's a big area and a ball, small area and a ball, big area and a ball. So what's important is not only just that you point the inside of the joint to the inside of the axle, but that you also have this as a matching pair. So when I have this one at the top, for my on the one side, then I have to have a small one at the top on the other side. So they have to be exact opposites on the other sides of the shaft. And if you do it this way, then you get the full flexibility of the CV joint. If you don't do it this way, it probably would still work, but you will not have all the flexibility that you need inside your drive shafts. So keep that in mind when you're assembling. Alright, so I've got the two rebuilt drive shafts, and I just need to grease up each one of the CV joints, and for that I've got a packet each that SKF has sent me together with my joints. So I'll quickly grease them up and get them installed, and then hopefully tomorrow my slave cylinders will arrive, and then I can do this brake job for the third time. But anyway, let's get going on this, and then we'll see what tomorrow brings. Right, so I've got the drive shafts in their spot. They were quite difficult to install, and I think mostly it's due to the aggressive angle I've got coming down to the hub. And unfortunately, the one thing I was dreading has come true, and that is that I think I have an issue with the angle of the CV joints coming from the gearbox to the stub axle over here. It took me a really long time to get these drive shafts in because they were constantly popping apart and locking up on me. Eventually I got them both in, and then I thought, you know what, let me just slowly test how the drive shafts work, and let me show you my problem. If I pop this guy on there, you can see it's locked up. So if I go in the other direction, I can go almost a full circle, and you can see it locks up again. Which means that these CV joints are overextended, and this is not safe for the car, it's not safe for me, it's not safe for anyone. So what I've got now, I've got a bottle jack underneath the suspension arm here, and I've got my digital level again. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be setting up the digital level, and I'm going to keep on jacking up the bottle jack and try to turn this wheel until it actually unlocks the CV joint, and I'll know that that is the maximum amount of droop I can have on these swing arms. So I guess the bad news here is all of this stuff is coming out again, and I have to re-index on my bench. There are the Safari guys who says cut a hole in your car. I'm still not going to do it, but it does mean I have a lot more work to do. But anyway, that's the way these kinds of projects are. I make these mistakes so you don't have to. So let's quickly find the angle where I need to get these things re-indexed at. What I'm going to do is it's going to be a relative angle. Again, so I'm going to see where we are at full droop, and I'm going to see where it actually releases those CVs so they turn freely. And that'll be the amount I take off of the angle when it's on my bench. Alright, so I'm now at 15 degrees, and she's running nicely. So I'm going to drop another half a degree and see where we are then. It's a bit more than half a degree, but let's see where we are, if it's still running. That's the lockup, you see right there. This is still very mild. but I have to force it through that point. So I think I'm gonna back this down so I get to 15, and let me just see where we are if I go to full droop at this point. That takes us to 16.6. All right, so I'm gonna back this out by 2 degrees. I think that is the best solution for me. But what that means is all of this stuff has to come off again, and I have to redo all the work I've done over the last 2 weeks, but hopefully it'll go quicker because nothing is rusted solid. So this is where I'm going to end the video, guys, because there's no point in you watching me do something you've already seen me do. So I'm going to drop all of this stuff off. I'm going to re-index it for 2 degrees less. I'm going to bring it back in, and you will join me in my next video when I start bleeding these brakes. But before I drop the axle, I'm going to put back the wheels because I have to do that in order to get the quick checks out again, because I can't drop the axle with the quick checks in place. So, which means I will give you a shot of this car on raised suspension, but obviously it's moot because we're going to do it again. But until next time, guys, wish me luck.